The Buddha's truth: all emotions are artificial. There's a sutta that describes the last year of the Buddha's life. It doesn't go a lot into the doctrine, but it does talk about the emotional attitude you should have toward the practice. You can think about the people who composed the sutta. They'd been with the Buddha, and now he was gone. The question was how to relate to that fact, that there had been this amazing person who, as they said, had turned upright what had been turned over, carried a light into the darkness, made things clear, urged, roused, and encouraged people to follow the practice. He himself gave an inspiring personal example, but now he was gone. They counseled two emotional reactions. One was Samvega, which literally means terror. Terror at the prospect of having to deal with samsara. That if you don't do anything, if you just continue in your old ways, it's an endless round that's going to entail a lot of suffering. Then there's pasada, confidence. Confidence that there is a way out. You reflect on the Buddha, and you're supposed to give rise to both of these emotions at once. If you have just Samvega, you get depressed. After a while, you get tired of being depressed and say, forget about that. I'll just do what I want. If you have just pasada without Samvega biting at your heels, it's easy to get lazy, especially as the practice gets good. Your mind begins to settle down. Concentration feels pleasant. The breath is pleasant. Your state of mind is pleasant. The world doesn't look so bad after all. If you could maintain that state of mind, it would be very easy to live in the world and not suffer too much. At least that's what you think. So you need the Samvega, a sense of urgency, a sense of dismay over the prospect of repeated rebirth, to make sure you don't get lazy and complacent. Ajahn Lee, in his meditation instructions, would often counsel an attitude of Samvega to begin with. He would say, as you contemplate your body, here's this body that you've been using to find happiness in this life. But how reliable is it? It's going to turn on you someday. Already, it's giving you pains here, pains there, illnesses here, illnesses there, as little warning signals. We spend so much time looking after the needs of the body. If we didn't have all these needs of the body, we wouldn't even have to have that kitchen over there. We wouldn't need to have the bathrooms. We wouldn't need to have huts or the whole system we have for providing food for the body. You ask yourself, how many people are really happy to be providing food for you? Think of all the people who have to work in the fields or work in the factories. Every time you're born, you bring a big gaping hole into the world. It has to be filled, and yet it never gets full. Just think about it. No matter how good your relationship is with other people in the world, no matter how giving you are, there's so much that you need to feed on. The Buddha said that this is basically what defines us as beings, our need to be sustained by food. He wasn't talking only about physical food. He was also talking about mental food. Without the food that gives a sense of well-being in the mind, we can't survive. Yet so much of our feeding on other people, other beings, is not voluntary on their part. Thinking in those ways gets you more inclined to want to practice. This is the way out. However difficult it may be, this is where I'm going to focus my efforts. You come into the present moment, and what have you got? You've got the pains of the body sitting here. Those can be adjusted though. You can work with the way you breathe. work with the way you conceive of the breath. Think of the breath energy going through the different parts of the body, down the back, out the legs, coming in the base of the spine, going down through the hips, coming in the back of the neck, going down the shoulders and the arms. There's a lot you can work with right here, so the path out is not always difficult, and it's not a selfish path. There's so much said about how Theravada is very self-seeking, but the path requires that you be generous, that you be virtuous. You give what you can, you avoid harming others, and you try to cleanse your mind. What's selfish about that? You're willing to replace our common habit of feeding with one of giving. Instead of taking in, you distribute out. Generosity, of course, is giving material gifts. Virtue is said to be the gift of safety. You may not be able to protect everybody from other sources, but you are protecting them from any potential harm coming from you. As you meditate, you give up your defilements. You become a better person to be around. This relates to that second emotion, Pasada. Ajahn Suwat would encourage an attitude of Pasada each time as you begin to meditate. That what you're doing here is important work. Trying to get the mind in concentration is good for you and for the people around you. As the Buddha said, if you don't have the sense of pleasure that comes from getting the mind into concentration, then no matter how much you may see the drawbacks of sensuality, of being attached to the body, you're going to go back to sensuality. The mind needs pleasure for its food, so learn how to feed inside, on the pleasure of the form of the body as you sense it from within, so that you're not taking food from other people's fields. Unfortunately, we can't see the goal. We read all these exclamations throughout the Pali Canon about what a wonderful goal it is. Think of that image the Buddha gives. If we could make a deal that for 100 years, every day in the morning, they would stab you with 100 spears, then midday, another 100 spears, evening, another 100 spears, altogether 300 spears a day for 100 years. But at the very end, you'd be guaranteed your first taste of awakening. He said that would be a good deal. You'd be well advised to take it, and the happiness that would come from the realization at the end would be so great that it would obliterate any thoughts of how much pain was involved in the path going there. It's that amazing. Or, as Ajahn Mahabua said, if you could take Nibbana out and show it to everybody, that would be the number one thing that people would desire throughout the world. Unfortunately, we can't see it. Even the Buddha couldn't take it out to show us, but he does give us an indication of how good it is. He says, you practice concentration and you find that as you go from basic levels of concentration to ones that are higher and higher, you begin to shed things that weigh the mind down. Then, as you go further and further, you finally get to total shedding. You learn how to appreciate the stillness, the well-being that comes from the stillness of the mind when it's not picking up burdens all the time. That's the irony. We think that by feeding on the world, we make ourselves stronger, and we do, but at the same time, we're piling burdens on ourselves. It's like eating a lot of food and getting so fat that your heart stops. The trade-off, we begin to realize, is that it's really not worth it. So as you sit here and meditate, think about these two attitudes. Samvega on the one hand, Pasada on the other. There's a huge load of suffering that we can leave behind by following this path. Think of that other image the Buddha gave. He got some dirt under his fingernail one time. He asked the monks, "Which is greater, the dirt under my fingernail or the dirt in the whole earth?" The monks said, "Well, of course, the dirt in the whole earth is greater, much greater." The Buddha said, "In the same way, for those who attain the first level of awakening, the suffering that remains for them is like the dirt under my fingernail. For those who haven't, it's like the dirt in the whole earth. The difference is that radical. So ask yourself, which of these two emotions is weak in you as you practice? Learn how to contemplate in ways to strengthen it. It may seem artificial, but remember, all of our thinking is artificial. All our emotions are artificial. They're all put together. What seems natural is simply what's habitual, ways you've been thinking again and again and again. But there are better ways to think, better ways to talk to yourself, and you can make them habitual as well. That's what creates the right frame of mind to practice, the right frame of mind to adopt as you read about the Buddha and his life. Try to think about what it was like for people back in those days who actually had met him, the impact it had on them, and then he was gone. But in leaving, he didn't just disappear without a trace. He left a huge body of teachings. He left his example. He left the organization of the Sangha as a community of people who could continue the practice. So, in his search for happiness, he wasn't the only one who benefited. He benefited lots of people. He's still benefiting us today. The fact that he searched for happiness in a wise way is probably one of the most important events in world history. So think about how you relate to that and use that thought to put some fire into your practice so that your search for happiness will be a gift, not only to yourself, but also for everyone around you. Samvega first. It's a common pattern that when you clear out some time to meditate, sit down, make up your mind you're going to stay with the breath, there's a part of the mind that sees this time as an opportunity to think about all kinds of other things. So, you've got to nip that tendency in the bud. That's one of the reasons why we have chants before the meditation, to get your mind in the right frame, particularly the chants on goodwill and equanimity, to fend off any thoughts of people who have wronged you in the past or people you've wronged. Things that you'd like to go back and change but you can't. You try to develop thoughts of goodwill and equanimity beforehand. You remind yourself, well, I'm trying to have goodwill for everyone, trying to be equanimous about the things I can't change. That gives you some tools to use with the thoughts that come up. Ajahn Lee also recommends that you start out with contemplations that give rise to a sense of samvega, so that when the desires for doing this, doing that, seeing this, whatever, come up, you can remind yourself, where do those things go? They go to suffering. Even if we attained the things we wanted, that wouldn't put an end to craving. Craving ends only when you have dispassion. And there's always going to be suffering that follows on the craving. That was one of the Buddha's main discoveries, that any craving that leads to becoming is going to entail suffering. Becoming is a process that happens in the mind all the time. You have a world appearing in your imagination. Sometimes the desire comes first, and sometimes the world appears, and you focus on something in that world that you want to desire. But in order to attain that desire, you have to take on an identity in that world. This happens in the thought worlds of the mind, and it happens on the large scale as well. This is why we're human beings. When we left our last life, something in the mind said, I want something in the human world. And whether it was a conscious decision or just something that welled up in the mind and then swept you along, here you are. Think about these desires for which you have to take on a human body. The human body has its advantages. We can gain all kinds of things because we have a human body, but it brings a lot of suffering in its wake. Aging, illness, death. These things happen all over the world. I was in Brazil recently and happened to visit a faith healer. Thousands of people were coming to see this man, all with their stories of illness, either their own illnesses or the illnesses of people in their family. You get this human body. You think you've got it as a tool for gaining your desires, and then it turns on you. And so much of our lives is devoted to looking after the body, to slow down the aging, to prevent the illness, to slow down the death. The things we do sometimes work up to a point, but then finally, there's no escape. Aging, illness, and death will have to come. And then the mind, because it can no longer depend on the body, will have nothing to depend on but this river of craving that keeps flowing and flowing and flowing, sweeping you on to something else. The Buddha's image for this is of a stick being thrown up in the air. Sometimes it lands on this end, sometimes it lands on that end, sometimes it lands splat in the middle. There's no clear pattern. It's not like we're all learning lessons in this life that move us up to the next level next time, and then, from that point, ever and ever upward. The course of our lives goes up and down, up and down. We gain some happiness, then we get attached to it. It's almost like the cosmos is playing a trick on us. We gain rewards for doing things skillfully, but then, if we get attached to the rewards, they pull us down. If you think about this and just stop there, it gets pretty depressing. But then you remind yourself that the Buddha found a way out that's not just a sour grape's way out. He says that there is an ultimate happiness that we can find through our own efforts, and fortunately, there's nobody to prevent us from trying to find it. Nobody in the cosmos has a bigger plan, saying this is where you've got to suffer for the sake of my bigger plan. Some of us would like to see a pattern or plan for the cosmos, but then we'd be a slave to whatever that plan was, and that would always entail suffering. So we do have the freedom to decide that we want to follow this path to the end of suffering. It's a good path, developing good qualities of mind, and it leads to a good place. So after you've developed Samvega, try to develop a sense of pasada, a sense of confidence that this is a good path to follow. That makes it a lot easier for the mind to settle down. Because you're not constantly wondering about, what am I missing? What you're missing is the process of becoming that leads someplace else and leads eventually to more suffering. So you've got a chance. You can take this body, these feelings, this mind, and put them together in a way that forms a path. We practice mindfulness of the body in and of itself, feelings in and of themselves, the mind in and of itself, before these things turn into another becoming that leads outside. It's like the keys on a computer keyboard. If you press a key together with a control key, it changes into something else. If you just keep it as the key in and of itself, the A is an A B is a B. But if you press them together with control, then all of a sudden, A is all, S is save, Q is quit. It goes off into some other place, some other realm. So we're trying to keep things here with body, feelings, mind, right on the level of A is A and B is B. Body is body, feelings are just feelings. You don't think about where they're going, what they mean, or what else could be made out of them. Just notice, what is it like to experience the body? What is it like to have a feeling? And how can you focus on the breath, which is part of the body, in such a way that gives rise to a good feeling? Because if you want to get the mind into a state of concentration, it needs a sense of ease, of well-being to stay with. Otherwise, it won't be able to resist the pull to go out and think about something else. The same with the mind. Just look at mind states as mind states, and not in terms of where they could provide a desire and then a world for you where they turn into something else. Try to get to these things before you've hit the control key. That way, you find that you can develop a sense of well-being, a sense of ease right here. Things can begin to relax in the body. The mind can begin to relax into the body instead of being ready to jump out all the time. It can meld back into the body because it feels good. The breath can feel good throughout the body. You've got the breath, which is body. Feeling filling the body, the mind filling the body. That's what we're aiming for, putting all these things together. We do that by looking at body, feelings, and mind just in and of themselves. Then, if things are out of balance, we try to remember, what did the Buddha teach to help bring things back into balance? And when they're in balance, what did he teach about maintaining that balance? These are the elements of concentration. They're the elements that otherwise we'd turn into states of becoming that would lead out someplace else. But here, we're trying to catch them. Before they do that, you've got them on their own terms, and you can turn them into a space where the mind can watch the process of becoming, to see that the causes of suffering really do come from inside. It's not as if someone out there is inflicting suffering on us. Even when people are inflicting pain on us, there's a skill that can be mastered in the mind so you don't have to suffer from the pain. It all starts right here. So bring things back as close as possible to right here. And remind yourself, anything that would flow out from this to go to the past or the future is looking for trouble. You can have a sense of satisfaction that you're in a good place. Have the confidence that this will be a good place. This will develop. The state of concentration is a form of becoming as well, but it's a form of becoming that can be part of the path. So here we are, in a good place, and even though the path may seem long, It's better to be on this path than to be on other paths that wander around aimlessly, not knowing where you're going. This path leads out. It leads to a genuine happiness that doesn't turn on you, a happiness that's true. That's one of the qualities of Nibbana that the Buddha emphasized again and again. It doesn't change on you. It's not deceptive. It's not the sort of thing that looks good in the beginning and then turns on you, like so many other pleasures of the world. It's good all the way through. So try to get your mind in tune with that path, because that's the only way any real satisfaction can be found.